Hey everyone, welcome to Can't Afford to Record, the YouTube channel where we figure out the art of audio production together. My name is Robby Miller, and in today's episode we're going to be catching up with my good friend Joel Kosche, who you will know from his previous band Collective Soul. He's in his current band Devil City Angels, and he also releases his own music. It was so great to catch up with Joel and pick his brains about different audio questions and hear his opinions on mixing and just audio production in general. I think you're going to really enjoy today's episode. You can also find the audio podcast version of this episode if you search for Can't Afford to Record the podcast, and you should be able to get that from wherever you get your podcasts from usually. That might be better for those who don't quite want to deal with the Zoom conference call audio and actually hear the mics that we're speaking into. Otherwise, if you do enjoy looking at our faces, then please enjoy today's episode, and I'll see you very soon. Well, here we are, and we've got Mr. Joel Kosche. Joel, thanks for being here.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on this fine YouTube program that you've set up.
That I've set up. We're in the early days, but I appreciate you jumping on the bandwagon. Hopefully you'll be able to say one day, I was there at the beginning.
It's trying to figure it all out right there.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Well, I've been lucky enough to know you for a few years now. We speak all the time. We're always sending stuff back and forth to do with guitars or recording. And I've been lucky enough to say I have been a member of the Joel Kosche trio band.
Oh, I thought you were going to say fan club, but
isn't that a part of it? I feel like that's a part of it.
It's all wrapped together.
When you join Joel's band, you're a part of the fan club as well.
Yeah,
it's true, because I am a real big fan of your songs, your songwriting, just your overall musicianship is very inspiring to me. I listen to your album all the time as well. And more so now in a slightly different way that I've got to know you over the past couple of years, because of course you have put so much work yourself into producing and mixing your songs and your albums. So I hope we can get into that a little bit as well. But before we do, the question I have for you is, do you remember a time when you couldn't afford to record?
Oh, yeah. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. I don't want to give away too much. I guess people know how old I am for the most part, but I started out, your home recording was definitely firmly in the land of let's make a demo. That was the thing. Let's do it. And who's got, a 4-track recorder or something like that we can use? Because if you're anywhere close to trying to put together, quote unquote, the real thing, you're going into the studio, which means you're saving your money up. You're working your old day job or whatever, saving your pennies. I mean, I remember selling a car one time, so I could get the money together to go into a studio. You were just doing your own thing. The engineer was just kind of like, well, tell me what you want me to record, and I'll do it. And so It's up to you to have the vision and know what you're kind of going for. And it was very expensive. I mean, it was as it should be. I mean, a studio has it's a brick and mortar place, and you've got professionals that trained to learn their craft, and everybody has to get paid, so it was definitely an expense. And you were lucky if you came out of there with something that sounded like a really good demo still.
And I feel like I'm younger than you. I feel like I got on the end of that train really, because my first band was when I was about 10 or 11 years old, and I guess until I was about 15 or 16, making a demo, that was actually your release. That was your EP or album. Like, it was never a thing that we're going to demo these songs to see what happens on the album. It was always like, no, our demo is what we're going to give out and sell.
Well, I mean, it was the same for all of the local bands I was in. Your demo was what you were going to try to get attention with, and you were going to sell it if people would buy it in the meantime. But it was always like in the back of your mind, these are the songs, and hopefully we'll get a record deal and we'll be able to cut them again at our studio with a producer, and make them the real deal or whatever. It's funny now. Sometimes I go back and listen to the quote unquote demos. Yeah, I mean, they sound damn good because that stuff was recorded without overthinking it. And you had a time frame that you had to follow. I mean, you had to get that done at a certain amount of time. There was no messing around. You came in there much more prepared, and it went to tape and through all these nice analog goods. And I just, some of the, at least kind of the guitar thing, I know for a fact, some of the guitars, go back and listen to the demo. Damn, some of the best guitar tones I ever got. And I don't remember knowing jack shit about any of this stuff back then. I mean, I just stick the microphone in front of it. 57. So, okay, that sounds good to me. And it sounds great. There's something about just knowing you have to get it done and keeping everything sort of where you don't overanalyze it so much. I guess there's a lot to be said for that.
And
I
I
think
feel
maybe the shortcoming, I think, in all the demo land was when it came to mixing it, like what you're trying to put together in this podcast. That's sort of an art form in itself. And I think, when you're, or at least in my experience, I was in these studios, a lot of times the engineer was a good engineer and he captured tones really well, but it didn't mean that he knew a lot of the bag of tricks to make him sound like a record. That was always the thing. It didn't sound like a record, It was because maybe they just didn't understand how much you got to light things up, with compression or EQ or whatever. It was kind of like just a very clean but sort of flat sounding recording,
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really cool. So when you were like doing these demos with these younger bands, you were in, did you already have an interest in audio production at the time? Was that something that you were, were you sort of hanging around the console or the recording device more so than the other guys might have been?
In the beginning, I remember it was almost a conscious effort that I wanted to remain separated from the whole recording world of it and the technical world of it. I wanted to be an artist and a guitar player and musician, and I didn't want to get hung up on the details after that. Now that lasted a while before I started realizing every time I go in the studio, I go, no, this didn't sound like I feel like my guitar should sound like this. I'm standing in front of it, it should sound like this, and it's not sounding that way coming back out of the speakers. And
Right.
Same with the drums and all the other stuff. I just feel like I started hearing the shortcomings in the sonic qualities of everything and how I envisioned the song should sound. And then I started realizing, I always have to pay money. I mean, if I want to just record an idea, simple idea, I got to pay somebody to help me out with that, and that gets expensive. If you got a lot of ideas coming,
Mm-hmm.
and again, it kind of dates me when I talk about all this stuff. But back then, I mean, it was, if you had a 4-track cassette recorder, I know that was one of the things you were asking about, like what my first way to record. That was the first thing. But as soon as I got my first job and started making any kind of money, one of the first things I bought was a little 4-track Fostex cassette recorder. So you could record 4 tracks and you could bounce 3 of them down to 1 and then just keep kind of piling it up. And I loved that thing. It taught me so much. And but that was a big deal, back then to have something like that. And then the digital stuff started coming along where you could multi-track digitally, and I couldn't afford it, but it was, the ADAT was a huge revolution. Again, I couldn't afford that, but that was kind of like now we take all this stuff for granted to be able to record anything really well.
Mm-hmm.
Not a whole lot of money now. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, probably recording better quality demos in a way on your iPhone than perhaps on that 4-track cassette recorder.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Isn't it's amazing?
It
Okay.
truly is.
So what do you think that 4-track cassette recorder actually taught you? When because you would have had 4 or 5 faders, you would have had a panning knob. So was that? I mean, that must have been quite revolutionary for you, really.
Oh man,
Just mess
it
around with
really
that.
absolutely. I remember recording, and of course, I have a. I think when I first got that thing, I didn't even have a drum machine or anything, so it was just guitar overdubs,
Hmm.
and I would put these things together, and I remember I'd take them into work playing for these guys, and they're like, "Yeah, that sounds real good, real good." They're just so basic, but I was so proud of it.
Of
Just being
course.
able to make harmonies and all this stuff. And before that, I've heard other people used to do this too. Take two boom boxes, and you'd have like the cassette recorder. You'd record something in there, and you'd play that out of the boom box and hit record on the other boom box and play along with it. Bounce it back and forth till you have like this multi-track with all this,
Right.
mixed in with it from the room hiss. But it was all that stuff. And once I decided to take the leap in, which I don't even know. At some point, it was just inevitable. I'm a tinkerer, so I
Right.
just started getting into it, and man, as much as I could afford and as much as I could do, I was always on it. I remember with Pro Tools when we finally got a computer at home, which I think was around '98. Somewhere around there, Pro Tools or Design or whatever at the time, they had like a free 8-track version of Pro Tools. I
Hmm.
mean, I downloaded that sucker so fast, man. My computer was just begging for mercy to be able to run it, but I was in it, man, as fast as I could get in there,
Right. Yeah. And that, of course, although it was, a digital, it was one of the first DAWs and something on your computer, it probably didn't have that much more functionality than perhaps your cassette, or maybe it did. I mean, what was the biggest difference messing around with that first
man.
piece of software?
Well, the software is way more powerful. You could
Right.
run sins and buses and groups
Right.
and effects. The Fostex is truly just like a tape recorder. All it
Right.
would do is just record onto a little 1/8-inch piece of tape, on a
Hmm.
cassette. And you were asking me what it kind of taught me. I mean, it teach me. Well, I learned. Those are old school techniques you don't have to do anymore. But the concept anyway of grouping things together and bouncing them to one track.
Right.
Which is sort of an efficient thing to do, right? We don't really have to do that nowadays with unlimited tracks, but it still puts your brain into the mode of being to have your arrangements together. Don't just sling a bunch of stuff out there. If you have to commit it, then you're going to be very careful with how the levels and the panning and how the parts work together. Because once they're committed and bounced, there's kind of no undoing that.
And
And
it kind of molds your direction for what the next tracks are that you're going to lay down and how you're going to do that, because now it's like, oh, you know what, I didn't like that echo I put on that. I'm just going to
right,
take it off.
yeah. Unfortunately, if
Wow.
you in the world of bouncing things, that's you better like that echo because
Yeah.
it's there now.
You
It's
better like that
forever,
echo.
Yeah. So
So I know you're a Pro Tools user,
yeah.
and you have been for a while. Is there, I mean, I think I probably know what your answer is. Is there a reason though that you're a Pro Tools guy? Is there a reason why you're stuck with that?
Stuck with it. Yes, that's a good way to put it too. Uh, no, I back in the days when we did record the tape. I remember one of the studios that we went to. The guy actually had the very first Pro Tools rig. I'm trying to remember what they called it because I want to say that it was slightly different name to it, but I can't remember it. And I can't tell it. But it was only 2 tracks, I think, and
Mm,
he was able to do some basic editing. Whether I think he used it to edit almost what a mastering thing would do, which was to fade one song into another,
mm,
and he did it on Pro Tools, like one of the very first versions of Pro Tools, and I thought it was magical.
mm.
Then and ever since then, it seems like my world seemed like it was always kind of around the Pro Tools world. My best friend, whose name's Mike Childers, he worked on he worked on about 4 or 5, but at least the very first Collective Soul record or demo or whatever. And Mike is a really smart guy. He's an engineer, and he started specializing in being a Pro Tools engineer. And back in the day when this stuff started really catching on, it seemed like the jobs in the studio were sort of split up. There was a producer, there was an engineer, and then there was a Pro Tools engineer. Now it seems like a lot of these jobs are all one job, right? But at the time, Pro Tools and to be able to run the computer was sort of its own little thing. And so he worked with the Collective Soul guys on those first few records as a Pro Tools guy. So I was around it then, and then as I was in other bands, we would always hire a guy to be the engineer who was now the Pro Tools guy. And I'm sitting there over the shoulder watching it, man, it's complicated, but at the same time, it doesn't look complicated.
Right.
And, I'd say when that free version came out, I was on it immediately because, I was familiar with the interface and the graphics and sort of the flow of it. I just needed to get in there. As everyone probably knows, there's no substitute for just getting in there and doing it yourself. You can't just have somebody telling you. You got to just start doing it, start moving things around, and that's how it all started. And I got on that train and never got off. They got me sucked in.
And that's the thing that I seem to see and read a lot and hear a lot is a lot of because I think everyone has their DAW now. Everyone is very committed to their own, to the DAW. I use Logic. A lot of people use Logic, but obviously Pro Tools is still really the daddy. But from what I've seen and read, a lot of people are like, it's not because it's necessarily the best. It's just what I've been using for 20 years. And I don't fancy changing that anytime soon or relearning another DAW. And I think that's the sort of reoccurring thing I keep reading about it. But they're also
true in my case.
Right.
I hate kind of, you've heard me whine and complain about I don't like upgrading software because I have to and playing that whole game.
Yeah.
So I don't. I'm on Pro Tools 10, which I know some people that are on a lot older systems. I'm on 10, and I refuse to budge.
Yeah.
So I don't want to buy anything else.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough, man. So you mix a lot of your own work, a lot of your own music. You have probably the most amazing ears I think I know of anyone. You're so good at hearing things. Maybe too good at hearing things at times, but you're so good at hearing the stuff and hearing these little nuances. Can you maybe talk us through some of the pros and cons to mixing and producing your own music?
Well, I think the pros are obvious. Having everything in your complete control, to have a vision and it's up to you to chase the vision down and make things exactly the way you think that they should. That's all a pro. And obviously at the same time, it's the biggest con because you really don't have another person to tell you, man, that was great the way you had it. You just screwed it up or whatever. It happens to me all the time. I will say this though, because I could just talk about that forever,
Right.
I do, at the end of it all, I still feel like at the end, I did come out better because I learned so much. I might have chased my tail in a huge circle, and that's okay if you have the time to do that, because when I came back, I learned several things along the way. I think
if you could just learn one thing, it was probably worthwhile.
Yeah. I think that's what's a good way I understand, your concept behind this thing is cool in that I don't, it's a continual learning process, and it should be, right? No one really has, for one thing, art is subjective, right? So one thing that somebody might think is the greatest ever to someone else is not so great. So I think no one really truly has the right answers. So it's all a learning process. It's cool to try to figure stuff out along the way.
I also wonder, I always sort of think about this, you know, like if you're about to get your bathroom retiled or something like that. If you pay for someone to do it, you pay a couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000 for someone to come and retile your bathroom. You're probably going to say when they're finished, yeah, it looks great, because you
Mm-hmm.
just paid a couple of $1,000 for someone to
Yeah.
come and do it. I wonder if there's a little bit of that in it as well, where like I've just spent 2 weeks in a studio and paid all this money. I probably am going to say it sounds good. And I'm sure it does. I just wonder how much that plays into it.
Well, for me, it wasn't so much. Yes, I think we nailed it. I still would pick things apart, but
Right.
I knew at least at the end of it, and there was something to be said for this, going into a studio or having someone else just finally take your stuff and mix it or whatever, you know that it's sort of like that's the end of it. And you
Right.
can just say, all right, I spent money on it, I did it, that is the end of it.
Right.
Whereas, as you know, problem with me, I got all this stuff here. I can just keep pulling those sessions up, keep
Yeah.
tweaking them, and they never get finished. I mean, it's just hard to say it's good enough sometimes.
Right. Yeah. 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 Um, yeah. I think we could probably fill 3 or 4 episodes just talking about how can you perfect anything,
Yeah.
and how can you keep going back and forth. Um, Can you maybe think of any things that have been happy accidents, whether it's been in the studio, or whether it's been you in your studio right there? I can see you're in your studio in your at your house, and you've got all the fancy
Yeah.
gear and everything like that. And I know you're always tweaking around with stuff. But is there anything that you've come across and you've been like, that is something I want to repeat whenever I can, almost like your signature touch on your songs? Is there anything that sort of developed over time like that?
Man, I don't know. The worst thing, Robbie, is there's been so many times where I didn't know I did get onto some good stuff. And
Right.
then I changed it. Then I come back and I go,
Right.
why did I change that? I don't even remember what I did.
Right.
There's been many moments like that. I could not point to anything right this second that I could say was a happy accident that has stayed in the bag of tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that I could really. I think about that one. I don't
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
there's not. I mean, I think I'm definitely constantly changing things so that people know a little bit more about my thing. I am not some professional mixer dude. That's why I like talking with you on this stuff, because I feel like I'm learning together. I've in the past, the band that I was in, Collective Soul, we had our uh, engineers and mixers, according to Chris Lord, Algae mix stuff, and it was always like I felt confident in my engineering. In the last 5 6 years, I feel like I could engineer a session and do well. But the mixing thing has always been like something that I've strived to get better at. I always had rough mixes that, after a while they start sounding better and better as rough mixes.
Mm-hmm.
And, I hand them off to somebody else to truly mix them. But in the last few years, I've tried to up my game as a mixer. And I have mixed a few things. I've mixed a few records, and of course my solo stuff that will be coming out will be mixed by me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is so that people don't. I don't want people to think I'm coming at it like an authority. I'm coming at it from a guy that's learning also.
Well, and I think that's just that's the very inspiring thing, and a big reason why I wanted to talk to you, Joel, is
Mm.
because whenever I call you up and I'm like, Joel, what do you think I should do here? What should I do there? You always say, I figure I'm doing the same as you. I'm figuring it
Mm.
out too. I don't have the answer. Um, but you are so good at, in my opinion, you would say otherwise of yourself, I'm sure, but you are so good at mixing. You're so good at dialing in a sound and dialing in a tone. um I guess, can you remember the time when even you can say, you don't have to be so humble, is there a point where you were like, I think I've got this thing dialed in now? Was there a certain song or a certain album you worked on when you were like, oh, okay, I can do this now, where I can mix now?
Certain songs.
Right.
And you heard me talk about all this stuff, uh, but certain songs for whatever reason I can get a hold of them, and guess what? They're usually the ones I didn't spend too much time on.
Right.
I look at them, I go, man, that was like my rough mix, and it's sort of just kept surviving as like, and now all these other songs that I spent hours on,
Mhm.
they've progressively gotten worse. And
Right.
the one that I didn't really spend that much time on, I just went with my instincts and some basic stuff, and they sound great. And yeah, there's some songs like that that I'll listen to them. Mainly, like I said, I've been spending most of my time on my solo record,
Mhm.
but I have mixed a couple other jams. There's that Devil City Angel song that
Yep.
is out right now. If people want to hear a mix of mine, that's on YouTube. It's
Yep.
called Testify. That's a mix that I did. I thought it sounded pretty good. Now I remember when I completed it, though, I still had that. Like if somebody wouldn't have told me hurry up and finish this, I might still be working on it, man, and making it sound terrible. But when I heard it the other day, I thought, what, I hadn't heard it in a while, and now it's on the video and it's been mastered. The mastering helped a lot, and I thought, it sounded good. I feel like under the right circumstances, if I'm not a ding dong, I could probably mix some of these songs. I think I could do all right on some of them.
Well,
So.
again, you're far too humble, because when
Mm.
I hear that Devil City Angel song and I hear your solo records and some of the songs that I've played live with you, because there's a great track. I won't necessarily say what it is, because I don't want to give anything away off your new up and coming
Yeah.
music. But there was a song that you that I played live with you, and I absolutely love, and I feel like that new song you got with Devil City, that Testify song, has this sense of it too. But you've really managed to dial in, and I hope you take this as a compliment, but there's a real Foo Fighters sound that you seem to like dial in with, where the guitars are kind of, they're not too wet, they're pretty dry sounding, and but in a really good way, if that
Yeah.
makes, am I making sense?
Oh
um
yeah.
would
Like
you
dry
say that,
sense.
is that an inspiration for you, that sort of 90s alternative rock, or even like 2000 rock kind of tone and sound? Is that something you actually go for, or am I
Well,
completely misreading it?
there are my influences. Most of the stuff I really love is like 70s style. Like
Right.
I love Queen and stuff like that. That being said, I don't really shoot for those tones. I'd still go for more of a modern rock mix tone.
Hmm.
Everything is just deeper sounding. There's more top end, there's more bottom end,
Hmm.
and everything's a little more stylized, I guess is a word for that. And I do have a handful of records that I reference for the sonics of it, just because that's what I like. And some of them are a little different than others, so it depends on the song where it's leaning. Foo Fighters being one of them, I like that Wasting Light records, the sonics of it. I
Hmm.
like the songs and the band. I love that band, but we're going to talk about the sonics part of it. I think that's a great sounding record. There's
Right.
another record that I reference a lot, and again, they're great songs, uh, but it's the sonics that I like so much, and that's that Weezer record called Maladroit, which
Right.
Tom Lord Alge mixed that one. I believe he engineered it too.
Right.
To me, those guitar tones are just awesome. Just big, mid-rangey, crunchy, awesome tones. And then I love, depending on the record, like Brendan O'Brien's stuff. I really like the Revelations Audio Slave record
Yeah.
that he, yep. So the big roomy drum sound stuff. Depending on, a lot of this stuff, what direction you want to swing the production depends on the song and the band.
Hmm.
But I like all that stuff. I like, I'm a guitar player, so I like big, crunchy guitars, and I do like things more on the dry side though, in general. Or if it's a verb ambient thing, I like the real room, sound, not so much a big splashy,
Right.
verb. I mean, it depends on the song, of course, but it's in general.
So would you be more likely to probably not have a reverb pedal going in when recording guitars, that would be something, if you were to actually add reverb on, you would do later on.
Yeah, almost always. And you know how all this stuff works. So like if we did reverb literally through our amp, um, that's its own sound. You know, it's
Right.
getting the bandwidth of it is a lot smaller because it's coming through a guitar speaker. Depending on where you put your distortion in the chain is going to affect the way the verb sounds. So that's just an effect in itself, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about verb as a sense to create space and a stereo image, then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna put that on in the computer. It's just
Right.
so much more control over it.
Yeah.
So I will do both, but generally I don't find myself reaching for reverb pedals too much.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right.
I'll do it in the computer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Couple more questions for you, Joel. When do you feel like, and again, we might be backtracking a little bit, maybe this would have been a better question a little bit earlier on, but when do you feel like a mix feels complete to you? And I'm almost talking before mastering stages here. Like, when are you like, okay, I can put that in the done pile now. I don't have to open up that session again.
You know, that's tough for me.
Yeah.
But I do have, and I don't know if this, sometimes I think this is not good. I mean, you would think this would be good to have a specific thing, a vision in your mind, how you want a song to sound, you know.
Hmm.
And I take it out to the car, man. I do a lot of car tests. And
Yeah.
if it's moving me in the right way in the car, I know how it's funny how like I have all this gear up here,
Hmm.
you know, expensive speakers and whatever, but it doesn't matter until I get it down in the car. And when I hear it in the car, I know if it's moving me the right way. And if it's filling out the vision that I have in my head for the song. And what usually happens is I'll go, man, that everything sounds great, but I hear this one little part. I need to do something on that. And I'll take it upstairs and I'll tweak it, come back down. And, you know, when you feel like you've checked off that little list, and I guess those are usually the small sort of fader ride kind of things,
Hmm.
or like, you know, some vocal that you can't hear or it's too sibilant. I don't know, something like that. But once you get the bed of the music pumping and jamming, you know, then you get that little checklist of the things that you need to, you know, just sort of tweak. You go
Hmm.
upstairs and you do them, and hopefully you can just say, "All right, I did all those tweaks. We're good."
Yeah.
But,
So the car test is really kind of like it
oh,
all it
absolutely,
all it all depends on your car test. That's
the
so
car test, man.
yeah, it's so important.
It's
It really is. You know,
you,
you got.
ideally, you know, you should listen to it on a bunch of different speakers, right? That's what they tell you.
Hmm.
Recently, and you'll get a kick out of this, Robbie. Recently, I had to repair my daughter's headphones because a cable broke. And I
Yeah,
actually put these things on. They sound horrible, but
perfect
I put them
reference on
on. I was
it.
like, all of a sudden, I could like hear like all this low mid stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't
Yeah,
hear that in my nice Sonys or the buyers, you know. And I went in there and
yeah.
I tweaked something just based on these junky
I
pink
love that. I love that so
kids
much.
headphone. And really, that's what you should do. I mean, I think I don't know about the rest of the people that'll be watching this, but for me, the biggest hurdle has always been my room and the speakers and the monitoring. You know, it's so hard to, and that's where we've had this conversation about headphones, man. It's
Hmm.
like most of the time now I'm wearing headphones because I'm so sick of the. I mean, I'll use speakers just to jam stuff and check a few things or whatever. But
Hmm.
I find in my room that things change with the amount of volume so much. You know what I mean? Like if I have it at a lower listening volume, I can't hear top end detail. And then I jam it louder to get over, you know, then the room starts kind of moving a little bit, it seems
Yeah.
like. And it's a, it can fatigue your ears and the whole bit. I don't know. So, of course, headphones fatigue my ears too, but I think you take a lot of breaks and use a lot of different speakers and just
Yeah.
constantly bounce around is the best chance you have.
And I think the car test has a big part to do with it as well, because where are consumers going to be listening to music the most? Well, maybe not in 2020. in the car, but
Yeah.
but the car is a
Yeah.
big deal. And do you
For
know
me,
what?
it is. That's where I listen.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? I think here's something crazy for you. I don't know if I ever spoke to you about this, but uh we the EP I just did, we got the you get all these really luscious versions of it back, all the different samples, and then you get down to the terrible sounding MP3 versions. So you get all this delivered to you, and of course you want to listen to the nice WAV files and all that. But do you know what? For me, I guess I listened to Spotify so much that I really felt like my songs sounded the way I kind of imagined they would, is when they came through the terrible sounding Spotify
Yeah.
versions. And that's when I was like, oh yeah, this sounds like everything else on Spotify now. Now I know that's going to sound like, obviously they do their own horrible things to it, and as it gets played back and all that kind of stuff. I know there's a lot of different controls you can get into your Spotify system for, but for me that was almost a point where I was like, okay, yep, this sounds good now. But it
Yeah.
shouldn't. It sounded better when I'm listening to the better file versions of it. But
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when we were young, and this only happened a couple of times. You did your demo, and somebody took it to some local radio station, got it played on the local station or whatever, and then you're in your car and you hear that stuff, and the station has compressed it so much and then all this stuff to it, but you're like, it sounds amazing, it sounds so awesome on
and
the
the
radio.
radio voice, just
Yeah.
as it
Yeah.
introduces it, just absolutely ticks that
Oh
last
yeah.
box. All right, this is it. It's done now. All
Yeah.
right. Something that I want to sort of make a little feature on this podcast and interview series I want to do. What is your best analogy for compression? Because me as a rookie person, still trying to figure all this stuff out, ultimately I know my ears are the most important thing, but man, I can't help but look at the stupid plugin and the needle and the numbers and trying to figure out, okay, are the numbers, is that the right release time? And I can't really hear the difference. But
Can't hear it.
have you got something that you would explain to someone, okay, this is what compression is, or this is how to think about it?
Well, a huge subject, right?
Right.
And uh everything is song dependent, it's style dependent, and then there's the idea of using compression to be natural, right? It
Right.
controls peaks and dynamics.
Yeah.
Like if you're plucking an acoustic guitar, even as good as you can be, sometimes it's still uneven in
Mm-hmm.
volume, or the guitar itself, right? I mean, the
Of
lower
course.
strings have more power than the higher strings, or the
Yep.
higher strings are the transient is hitting you. So a compressor at that point, you might be trying to dial in to just tame that stuff, and you don't want it to color the sound. You want everything to sound natural and nice. I use a compressor pedal, in my guitar rig for clean parts, just for
Mm-hmm.
that, just to even things out.
Right.
And it doesn't sound like there's a pedal on, it just sounds even and nice. So there's that idea of compression. Then there's the idea of trying to give song energy, right? Or well, drums usually are where that's coming from most of the time on rock music. And so what you're trying to do is create the illusion of energy, of standing next to a drum kit and getting your head blasted off,
Mm-hmm.
even if the volume is really down low on your stereo, right? So that's sort of a stylized thing. It's a trick in a way, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to make drums punch, and you're bringing up the tone of the drum. So I mean, I guess hopefully everybody understands how compression works, right? I mean, I don't want to get into all that, but
Right.
if we're talking about the general sense of how we're talking about using it, so there's that idea, and then there's something about just blowing stuff up sound. You can make it its own just effect in itself,
Mm-hmm.
which I love to do. I mean, me personally, I love compression. I know some people, I'll read things where people are very proud of themselves for saying they don't use any EQ, they don't compress and all this, and I'm like, okay. I mean, depending on the song or whatever, I can't see how you can do that for any big rock modern production sound. I mean,
Right.
it just is part of what we're trying to do here is create an illusion. We're trying to create
Right.
that energy, and a lot of that comes from mashing a compressor. Letting the transit come through. So that punch gets there, and then bringing up sustain behind it, maybe. Or I mean,
It's the
there's
length.
so yeah,
Yeah.
so many ways you can do it or whatever. But um, and then there's the color of compression, depending on the circuit itself.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, I think, don't really think about that long enough, that you're running it through a box. There's the technical part of it, automating a volume, a threshold, and but there's also a whole circuit that has to make up the gain
Mm-hmm.
losses and the input. All that's a topology that you could use a tube for, or solid state. All that colors the sound, so that it introduces distortion or saturation at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why people reach for different ones for different things.
Right. Right.
Um,
No, I think you summed it up really well there with just creating the energy. What energy is it you're going
mhm.
for? Is it the delicate plucking of guitar strings, but taming and rounding off
Right.
that top end, or is it full on crunchy vocals underneath something else, or is it just a snare drum that sounds really gnarly? you know.
Right. I know.
Um, yeah, I think you got it good there. Okay, one last question, if that's okay, Joel. So, um, what song? Do you have any songs where you think this is a terrible mix, but it really, really comes down to the fact the song is so good that it just overrides any kind of production aspect? Because that is ultimately, even though we're all obsessed with how to get the right sound, ultimately, if a song's a good song, that usually trumps anything else.
Yeah. I mean, and I was thinking about that, and I'm having a hard time thinking of songs that suffered from the mix.
Mm,
I do think there are songs that I can think of that um, you would go, man, that was just not produced well. I mean, like, but the song was so good anyway. That,
mm,
and I mean, I don't like bringing up my old band too much, but a really good case of a song resonating despite the production of it is that song "Shine" by Collective Soul. If you
right,
listen to that first one, now that I didn't play on that demo, but I played on the re-record of it. But
right,
the song that everybody knows is truly from a demo, and it has like a little drum cap program, and direct guitars, and it the way I understand it, is never really meant to be widely released. When Collective Soul was signed to Atlantic Records, they always thought they were going to recut that song.
really.
In Atlantic, were like,
Wow.
no, we're not recutting that. I mean, it's already going. And so if you listen to that song, it sounds like a demo to me. It's very small sounding.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much the mix. I guess my point, though, you could mix that 100 different ways, and it's still probably going to sound kind of like a drum machine, a demo, or whatever. But
Right.
I think they remastered it when they got signed to Atlantic. But there's some, a lot of older songs in the '70s that I like, that are bands that I like. That if you go back and listen to it now, you think, man, it sounds sort of, the drums sound sort of flat, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe a guitar is out of tune or something. I don't know.
But
Remixing it, I don't know. It's sort of like the production of it, but it didn't
and
matter.
exactly, we've kind of come full circle back
Yeah,
to this is where we are for the next 3 day, boys. 3 days.
yeah,
Let's just make this album and hope it's good. And there we go, it's done. And now they sound that way, and we love the way they sound because we've heard them a million times. But
yeah.
sometimes I think of stuff and I'm like, this song is so good, but I wonder if they would change it again now.
Uh huh.
You know,
Have you got a? I'm curious. Is there a song you can think about that you
there are,
thought of? You like the jam, then you went back and thought, man, this is not really mixed that well. But what is
yeah.
there some? Which one?
Do you know? I don't know how big they got in the States, but Ian Dury and the Blockheads. Do you know that band?
No, I don't
They
know them.
they had a song called "Hit Me with Your Rhythm Stick." I'll
Okay,
send it to you. It's actually a really good song. I really like the song.
okay.
but there's times where I'm just like, his voice sounds like he is singing like this far away from my face. I don't know if that's a good
Okay.
thing or a bad thing, but it bugs the hell out of me. Um,
It's a very loud vocal.
very loud
Okay.
vocal, and I've always just wondered,
Okay.
like, I wonder if that was just done on purpose, or that was just how everyone felt that day, or maybe they just never revisited it and they sent it off, and that was the done thing. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to
Okay.
you later on today, and you'll see what I
You
mean.
know, that band Muse is a band that I love.
Yes.
Some of those songs, I think, I'm not, again, I can't, it's mixed together. I mean, I'm not sure how much is the mix of a song versus just the production of it, but some of those
Right.
drums, I think, on some of that Muse stuff, and I love this band, right? I think they're awesome. And I always thought, man, I think I would have gone for a bigger drum sound. They sound a little flatter to me.
Mm,
But that could just be a production thing, not so much somebody dropped the ball when they mixed it.
right. Yeah, 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 for sure. Well, Joel, thanks so much for being on the channel on Can't Afford to Record. It's we talk all the time anyways, so I for me and you this isn't really much of a big deal, but I'm
Right?
glad we could sort of open up this conversation to other people that want to get into this and sort of learn along with all of us, because like as you sort of well pointed out earlier, we're all learning. You're learning,
Yeah.
I'm learning. We're all just trying to figure out how to get the best sound or the sound that's in our head all the time. But I'm really, really excited to hear more of your music as well. I can't wait for your next
Oh
album.
man, thank you, man. Well, I can't wait either. Maybe I can say good enough here pretty soon. Get it done.
I'm excited for it. I'm excited. But Joel, thanks so much for being on, man. I really, really appreciate it. And let's catch up again real soon.
Yeah, man. Let's do it.
All right.
We need. By the way, we need to jam together again real soon.
Ah,
And by
I know.
Robby, we were talking about Planet X. Robby played with me, but he was playing bass. Talk about overqualified, man. This guy, we got to get you on guitar, man.
Man, wait, do you know what? We will be in a band one day together where we're both playing guitar, and
Yeah,
and I'm gonna feel sorry for those guitars because it's gonna be ridiculous. We're gonna have a
yep,
great time.
yep.
All right, Joel. Well, listen, thanks so much, man, and we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, man. Thank
All
you.
right, see you soon.
All right, bye.